In a shahakal. Baruch Hashem. In a shahakal. Baruch Hashem, we're starting a new Torah today. In Likutei Maran, Tinyana, Chaf Hei. Chaf Hei in Tinyan in the second Sefer. Torah 25, Koi. Koi Ma Hashem. This Torah is all about the great, great secrets of Hisbodedus. Hisbodedus. As we're going to see, this is a Torah that's like a partner, a pair with Torah Ayin Gimel that we just learned about the power of Tehillim being Mesugel L'Tshuva. And now Rebbe Nachman is taking us to the world of Hisbodedus. Hisbodedus is an interesting word because it's reflexive. Boded means to be alone. That you're yashav, boded, to be alone. So Hisbodedus is the process of becoming alone. It's going through a process of being alone. And we'll have to get into this, but the world doesn't really like that. They usually run away from being alone. And if people are by themselves, you think it's like strange. What are you doing? I always say, imagine you're walking with your wife and kids, and you're in Central Park, and you see a guy sitting on a bench. He's not learning a sefer, he's not on his phone, he's not texting anything, he's just sitting. And he maybe even looks at you and gives you a smile. At that point, what do you think to yourself? Run. This guy's nuts. He's crazy. Book it. Now, could be he is nuts. Enlightening. Or maybe he's actually just being alone with God. And he's much more sane than we are. You don't always know. But we generally, as a society, run away from being alone. Even in yeshivas, you're learning with your chavrusa gets up for 1 second. You go on your phone, you do something. What do you mean? Just you can't be alone with your Gemara for a second? And we'll learn that all of life is trying to be like God. Right? Like the Gemara says, Mahu Rachum, just like God is compassionate, Afata Rachum, you should also be compassionate, Mahu Chanun, He's graceful, you should also be graceful. You should emulate God. God's a giver, you should be a giver. God helps people, you should be a helper of people. Well, there's another character trait that we know about God, is that God is alone. Why is He alone? Because Kabbalistically, there's nothing but God. Ein oid milvado. There's nothing but God. So if you want to be close to God, you also have to learn how to be alone. It's a very deep thing to think about. That's what it says, V'yivasar Yaakov levadoi, and Yaakov was left levado, by himself. He was alone. Hisbodedus is the process of allowing yourself to be alone. Now, by the way, when you do that, you're not alone, because you're with God. So it might feel lonely, but then you become ultimately connected to the true reality of the aloneness of Hashem. So Hisbodedus is this journey of going to be alone. I'll mention it now just because I was thinking about it and I brought it in, is that this sefer that Aryeh Kaplan beautifully put together, which is Hishtachlut HaNefesh, is basically like a booklet on how to translate everything that we're talking about right now into very practical terms. The outpouring of the soul, it's called. It's pictured by the Kollel. And it's about being alone. And we're going to learn that being alone is not something that you have to do and leave the world. We'll see that maybe you have to a little bit, But then the idea is that you live a regular, normal life. And we're going to talk about all what this means. And this is something that's like a keynote of everything in Breslov, is that people know, like, oh yeah, aren't Breslovers like into like Hisbodedus? It's like a thing, right? Like right, they go to the forest and they're like, Tate! You know, like that type of stuff. And your kids are sleeping at 4 in the morning, and you're like, you know, can you be quiet? My kids are sleeping. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about becoming alone. Now, you can go into the forest. Don't wake up your neighbor's kids. But we're going to talk about that. What Rebbe Nachman is talking about here is not something that was unique to Breslov. He just spoke about it a lot. But this was something from all the tzaddikim, from all the generations, knew the power of Hisbodedus, of becoming alone with God. The Chavetz Chaim spoke about this, the Ramchal. This is something from Atik Yoimin, from the beginning of time. Vayetze Yitzchok lasuach basodeh, and Yitzchok went out, maybe like that, painting, to pray in the fields. Lifnais Erev, as the sun is setting. But the tzaddikim always knew that you have to go and be alone with God. So let's see this Torah now. We're going on a journey into Hisbodedus. And this Torah is specifically going to take us through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So let's go into this together. Hisbodedus hu mala elyoina. It's a very great thing. A mila is like, this guy's got good milas. What are his milas? He's got like, wow, he's got good milas for shiduchim. So a mila, the fact that it has a mila is already a good thing. Which is gedoyla, which is elyoina, a very exalted mila. Ugedoyla, and great, min hakol, more than everything. Now, Rebbe Nachman, yes, does sometimes make very large, sweeping statements, and then he'll explain them. But that's a pretty big, sweeping statement. This is like the biggest thing you could do as a human being is this thing called Hisbodedus, about becoming alone with God. This is like the biggest thing in the world. Now, what does this mean? Dahainu. What is this thing called Hisbodedus that we're speaking about, which happens to be the biggest thing? It's gedoyla min hakol. What is this thing? Likboya loy. Likboya is the lashon of keva, to establish and make it keva. Keva means set. To establish for oneself, al kol ponim at least, shah or yoser, an hour or more daily. We'll see, maybe does it mean an hour? Many would say that in the Breslov Masorah that it means mamish an hour or more. Others say shah means like a period of time. It's like a period of time. Or more, every day, lehitboded levado, to be alone by yourself. So what's the double lashon? So I was thinking that lisboided levado, to be alone by yourself. Just tell me that I need to be alone. And by the way, where? Be'ez cheder, or basode, in a room, a private room, or in a field. And what do I do there? We'll talk about it. You're going to talk to God. So why does it say lisboided levado? To be alone by yourself. So I really was thinking that lisboided levado, it could have just said, at least spend an hour by yourself, talking to God, either in a field. Because there's two things. There's called lisboided, and then there's levado. Lisboided means to make yourself alone with God. Levado means actually by yourself. So there's a level of hisbodedus where you do it actually by yourself. You make yourself literally, like in a cheder or a sadeh, like maybe that fine yid over there, that you actually go levado. But then there's another level of hisbodedus where when you're not levado, you came back from the field, you came back, you went out of your room, and now you're speaking to your wife and your kids, you're hanging out with talmidim, hanging out with your rabbanim, you're going to a simcha, but you never left hisbodedus. You're still alone with God. You're still here, you're like having conversations, but at the same time as you're talking to people, you're alone with God. You're buying a coffee from the coffee shop, but you're just alone with God. You're not levado anymore because there's other people and it's great. We love people. But at the same time that you're with people, you're being hitboded. You're in the process of just being alone with God because there's nothing but God. So in order to get to that darga of being in a constant state of Hisbodedus, you need certain times where it's actually levado. You actually go by yourself, maybe to the Kollel. Maybe you put yourself under your talus, that's also called levado. David the Melech said that I went under my covers. You never did that as a kid? Like, it was like your secret hiding spot. Put your covers over your head, a little flashlight maybe. You guys are young. With your phone, whatever. And your mamish like, it's like your own fort, like a little base. Just you and Hashem. And you know it's like, this is like my hiding spot. Like, it's just you and I, Hashem. So, we want to learn to have times that are actually levado. And that time levado will then help us to have Hisbodedus the whole day. That even when you're talking to family and friends, you're living in a space of just you and God at the same time. So that's Hisboded levado, be'ezeh cheder oy basada. So he says you can go to a room, you can go to a field. Now it's interesting, those are two examples. One is a covered space, one is an open space. The Rebbe Nachman has also, everything here is woven with Kabbalah. So there's different ways to understand it. It could be a cheder, it's like an ora makif, like you have something that's surrounding you. So you're able to bring in an or from a surrounding light. When it comes to being in a sadeh, there's no ora makif. It's even beyond the makif. Or being in a sadeh is the makif, and then being in a cheder is like the or pinim, it's bringing it in, it's more enclosed and close to you. In either case, these two places have significance because they're usually quiet. And by a cheder he means like your dorm room or in a sadeh. And many Breslovers take that literally. They'll like go to the fields and go to the forest. Just talk to God. Now what do you do when you go there? So now he says, Lefarish sichasai, to explain your sicha, to explain your conversation, your sicha, beinai levein koinai, between you and your master, between you and God. Now, you might think that you should only talk about like certain things, like there's probably taboo subjects, right? So you don't tell God like, everything. Like, why would I do that? Like, maybe it's like not even nice for me to say things that are not appropriate. If I would go to a king, I wouldn't maybe just, bare my whole heart. But when it comes to God, say everything. Everything. What about my complaints? Oh yeah, everything. Says the Rebbe, b'tainus v'amaslis, all my problems, my tainus, my complaints, all my excuses that I've been making in my life. Tell God about them. Everything. Everything. Everything that's going on. B'divrei chen, in a way of grace, Hashem, please. I want to find grace by you. And ritsui upius. Ritsui is when you're also trying to, let's say you hurt somebody, you have to be mafayas them. This is a halacha also before Yom Kippur, is that let's say somebody did something and they feel bad now and they want to do tshuva. So if they did it to somebody else, they have to go ask for forgiveness. Now maybe that person is not so, happy with what happened. So you have to really bepius, beritzu, you have to really I'm sorry, bro, I'm sorry, I really am. You keep waking me up when you come in at night. Every night. You said that before. You really mean that? I'm telling you, I'm going through stuff and and like I'm really making breakthroughs in this. Like your actions are going to be stronger than your words. You know, you're right. Like I know, I'm trying. I'm really. Oh, bro, like, just I hope you find in your heart, like I really want to be better. Okay, like I trust, you know, like I believe, like I feel that you're saying something authentic right now. That's ritzui. It's like I'm trying, and you mean it. And don't wake up the guy when you come in late. Also, that's it. That's like the end of the tshuva. But the ritzui is like I'm trying to really let the person know that I'm changing and I'm better, and can you please find it in your heart to see that? So you're talking to God about that. You're saying, see that I'm different. It's very vulnerable, this relationship. It's like open and vulnerable. Levakesh, to ask, ulischane, and to like plead. Milafanav Hisbodedus, in front of God. In front of God. There's no distance here. When you're talking to God, you're in front of God. Not physical, but spiritually. You're talking to God. And what is the penultimate of what this is all for? Shiakarvai elav le'avoidosai be'emes. I just want to be close to you. Be'emes. I just want to be an Eved Hashem. That's really where this is all going. Okay, and talk about all your stuff and your hang-ups and this one and that relationship and whatever. Just say it all. And at the end, Hashem, it's just because I want to be close to you and I want to speak all this out and just... It's the best therapy session. And you don't even get a bill in the mail afterwards. It's worth paying a bill to a good therapist, but I'm saying, Hashem, there's no bill. It's all gains. But just, it's got to be honest and emistic. Hashem, help me. I want to be better. And specifically, you're going to a place that's hopefully quiet in the beginning, that even when you come back into Times Square, you're just also able to talk to Hashem, like it's just you and Hashem. Yes, Yoni.
When you dive in like Yichud and you don't dive in with the minion, like your answers may not be like answered or listened but not answered. But is that the same thing with this when you're alone that you may not be answered?
No, that's formalized prayer. That those tefillahs have a schus when they're with a minion, because the minion doesn't have anything that is blocking it. The minion is like a microcosm for the macrocosm of Kollel Yisrael. And Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker, and Kollel Yisrael is forever. The Jewish people are eternal. When you're in a minion, you're creating like a microcosm of the entire Jewish people, and Hashem looks at the prayers of the entire Jewish people as having merit. But if a person breaks himself off for those formalized tefillahs, and he says, I'm going to do my own thing, so Hashem says, well, let's see if you as an individual have merit, because you're moving outside the minion. And by the way, it says on Rosh Hashanah that even though every single day you're supposed to do everything you can to daven in the minion, for Shachos Mincha Ma'ariv, it says, however, when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, it's even a sakana to not daven in the minion. It's so important for Yom Noraim to daven in the minion that it brought down in halacha as like, don't play games. But I just want to daven Yechidus on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the time that you want to be in the merit of Kollel Yisrael as an entirety. That's as far as formalized tefillah, how it works. But when it comes to Hisbodedus, this is something which in a certain way is not connected to those formal tefillahs. This is just the yearnings and the secret place of a heart of a Yid. This is in a certain way what the formal tefillahs have, is that There's a technology that the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah gave us, and David HaMelech gave us, and Tehillim, that pull us back through the gates of Tshuva. They get us to where we need to go. But because they're formalized, they help the entirety of the Jewish people and the entirety of humanity go to where we need to go to, but they don't fully unleash the individuality of the human being. The individuality of the human being comes through Hisbodedus, because Hashem says, let me just see you. Let me see the wholeness of the you. I want to see, in Shachris, there's not like so much, room to just all of a sudden start like just doing your own thing, like just making up a song or something with words in the middle of Shemona Esrei or in the middle of Birkas Kriyat Shema. Like there's actually like rules of how the pipelines work. It would be like going into a spaceship and saying like, I don't know if that button like looks nice there. I'm not vibing with it. I think we should move it. Do you understand? As a technology, like we gotta get this thing to the moon. I know you don't maybe think that like it's like got a good vibe, or maybe change the color or something. Like the scheme is off in your opinion, but like there's a technology here that will get us to where we need to get to. That's formalized tefillah, and that's essential in formalized tefillah that a person knows that there's a technology that's taking us to where we need to get to. But when it comes to Hisbodedus, anything you feel, you go with. Anything that's on your heart, at that place, the technology is, maybe this button doesn't feel right here. Maybe it should be a different color scheme. Your rocket ship is something you're designing, and it will fly according to your design. So it's two different things happening. Of course, they are complementary. That he hit both davens in a minyan and has Hisbodedus time. But this Hisbodedus time is meant to be something very organic, very individual. There's no right and wrong here. Rebbe Nachman's going to teach us that even when you're struggling in Hisbodedus, make that the topic of your Hisbodedus. Tell Hashem how much I'm struggling in my Hisbodedus. That itself is, let's talk about that now. Yeah.
Second follow-up. If so, should we also follow the structure of the davening, like start off with phrases, then ask what you need, and then say thank you, or?
You don't have to. It's a nice thing, but you don't have to. This is about tightness, amaslas, derechein, ritzui pius. I just want to be close to you. I just want to be close to you. But you could talk about anything you want. Literally anything you want. If your cat is sick, and it's on your heart, and she's been with you for years, and there's stuff that's on your heart that you just want to speak out. It's so authentic, and this is how to be an authentic Jew. Hisbodedus. It's absolute authenticity. Because you could really just speak things out, and all the baggage that we build up comes out in Hisbodedus. Now, by the way, why is this also so important? Because sometimes what happens during the day, you're in a certain place, you're with a certain person, something happens, and it irks you, let's say. I'm sure nobody here ever gets irked, but let's say something irks you. So, you might want to respond, you might want to let that person know that I didn't appreciate that. Depends, maybe. But if you know that you have a period of your day of Hisbodedus, you can almost tell yourself, I'm gonna speak this out with Hashem, exactly what happened. I'm gonna work through this. If I respond right now to this person, it could be there's gonna be a blow up, the whole thing's gonna explode. But if I know that I have today a specific time that I have blocked off, that I'm gonna really honestly speak this out with you, God, everything that happened, so I'm not so bothered anymore, because I'm going to work through this. Maybe something happened that I didn't know about, I didn't consider. So Hisbodedus is this amazing time that you can work through things in like a very, very meaningful way. So it doesn't have to be that structure. It could be that structure. It could be anything you want. You're carving out a space where you can very honestly, in a raw, vulnerable way, share anything and work through things. So says the Rebbe. So you must be thinking, well, probably the way to do this is I have to make sure that I speak maybe like Lashon Kodesh. So I'm going to have to learn how to speak Lashon Kodesh, Hebrew, and then I'll be able to do this properly. Because that's like God's language. The Torah is written in Hebrew. He says, no, actually speak any language you understand. Actually, better that you don't even speak in Lashon Kodesh, if it's not your mother tongue. Speak in French. Tu parles français? If that's your... Oh, now Michael's like, oh. He said something in French. So, dafka you should speak in French. Or English. So says the Rebbe. You should speak to God in the language that you speak in. Meaning God understands English? Yes. Yes, he does. A few years ago, Rebbe Melech Biderman was here for Rosh Hashanah. He comes every year, Baruch Hashem Teisha Torah. So it was, and then you know what he does? He doesn't sleep basically for 2 days straight. And then right after Rosh Hashanah finishes, to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he goes up to Reb Shimon. So he asked all the Chevera, as he does every year, to write your chaburas, to write the things that you want to accept upon yourself for this year. And he has many analogies about the power of a Kabbalah. And the Kabbalah takes you where you need to get to for a good year. And all of us should be already making Kabbalahs for the upcoming year, thinking about what you want to accept upon yourself. It shouldn't be a big thing, but it means something that's going to go all the way. And everyone's writing these Kabbalahs, and they're like, Reb Melech, like, should we write them in Hebrew? Like, say, write them in English. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai also reads English. Don't worry, he understands. Because he says, I'm going to bring them all up to Meron, I'm going to put them on Reb Shimon's kever. Reb Shimon's going to take these up to Hashem. Not a bad attorney, right? He says, don't worry, you can write them in English. Reb Shimon also understands English. So Hashem understands English also, or French. And it's very important to speak in Hisbodedus in a language that you understand, because it flows. It flows. V'tfila v'sicha zu yeh b'lashon shemedabrim b'y. Dahaina b'lashon Ashkenaz, in Yiddish, b'medina seinu. There was Yiddish. Ki b'lashon HaKodesh kosher lo lefarish kol sichasai. Because in Lashon Kodesh, even people that were great scholars, it's sometimes hard to express what you really want to say in Lashon Kodesh if that's not your mother tongue. V'gam ein alev nimshach achre diburim, and the heart is not pulled after the words that you're saying. Machmas she'ena murgal kol kach behaloshin. If you're not regular in that language, if you're not regular in that language, you're not pulled after it. But when you speak a language that you're regular in, it pulls your heart. I love Hebrew and Hebrew music. But you should know, every time that a beautiful Hebrew artist has a song, and let's say they're singing in Hebrew, which is like King David's Psalms are in Hebrew. So they're singing a song from King David in Hebrew. And then all of a sudden the song has English part to it. It touches my heart a lot. When it goes into the English part, it's like, that's why there's a great artist named A.B. Rottenberg, Journeys. Which is a lot of the songs are in English. And it pulls your heart. It pulls your heart very, very much. Maybe we'll send something with a link to A.B. Rottenberg, to Journeys. It's something, the English words are very pulling because I grew up speaking English. It's my mama lashon. So it speaks and touches something within. And even though I love Hebrew and I love languages, I happen to like French a lot also. And just because I also grew up speaking French. Because Canada is a bilingual country. So we had it in school. And I liked, so it's like familiar. Whenever I hear people speaking French, it's like, it touches something within me, because it was from Girsa Diankasa. It's when I was a little boy, I had it in me. So when you do Hisbodedus, you want to speak to Hashem in the language that you fully understand, because Hisbodedus is a very honest, intimate relationship. And therefore it has to be in a way that you could be honest and open. This comes up sometimes, as you have a guy and he says, maybe a Baal Tshuva guy, and he's like, I think I want to marry just like a Hebrew-speaking girl. Or he has a guy, he doesn't speak French, but he meets a French girl, and he's like, I think I want to marry this girl. How's your French? He's like, je comprends un petit peu. How's your Hebrew? Ani mevin ketzat ivrit. So I'm like, the first question is, no, but she's a great girl. I'm sure. The question is, can you express yourself emotionally in Hebrew? Can you express yourself emotionally in French? Can you express yourself emotionally in Spanish? Can you express yourself emotionally in any other language? If a person can't express themselves emotionally in that language, then I would be very careful of tying the knot. Because yes, it's true, souls are beyond language, but the souls are in this world now. And the two souls are connecting in a marriage, and the marriage is built on very honest communication and vulnerable communication. And it needs to be in a language that they could speak. Now, have there been successful couples that barely, he was like some English-speaking, Baal Tshuva guy from, wherever, San Francisco, and she was like a convert from, Zimbabwe, and barely speaks any English, and it just goes. There is such things, yes. But it's not easy. And you need to be very, very high-level souls to be able to communicate where there's a big language barrier. And when you want real success in the relationship, it has to be in a language that there's real communication. That you could it like flows out. As Rebbe Nachman's about to say, that he says the following. Ki ein darkeinu l'daber b'loshen HaKodesh, al b'loshen Ashkenaz, we speak Yiddish, he's saying. For you and I, this means we all speak English, or French, or Spanish, or whatever language you speak. Shemesaprim u'dabrim boi, kal v'karov, so it's actually kal. It's easier, and karov, it's closer. Yoser l'shaber libai, to break your heart. That's actually what you want. When you speak to God, you want to have your heart break open. Now, what do you mean? That doesn't sound so good. To break it? Well, yeah, when it cracks, then all the feelings can start pouring out. If the heart is too sealed, cryogenically shut, you don't feel anything. What you actually want is that the heart cracks open, and then everything just flows out from there. Like the Kotzker Rebbe said, there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. So when you speak in a language that you understand, that's what I'm saying. When I hear these Hebrew songs and all of a sudden they go into English words, my heart just like melts. It speaks my language. And we talk that way. Like, oh, you're speaking my language. Like literally, yeah, English. So it's very important when you speak to Hashem, even though maybe you're working on your French, or you're working on you could tell Hashem in English, Hashem, I want to speak French, please. It's such a beautiful language. And I'm talking to myself, I forget it from 8th grade. I had it from K till 8. Immersion français, which means that you were totally immersed in it. So basically, half my day was in French. So when people speak, I'm like, I know what you're saying. It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful language. French is mamish beautiful language. I'd love to be fluent in it. But I feel like my accent's actually decent because it's mamish from, it's from the Girsa Diankasa. It's from being little. But I want to know more languages, Hashem. But I'm telling you in English that I want to know that. So speak in English. Yeah, Daniel.
If one wants to start doing like a Hisbodedus, like 5 minutes a day or something like that, when would be the right time? Like, should we do it after davening or like before davening?
So it says that, very good question. Yes, a person doesn't need to start with 1 hour or more a day, as we mentioned. They should start with whatever they can do. So that's the first part, is that the time you mentioned, addressing that, is that, yeah, you could have some time of the day. That's, let's say you have 5-10 minutes. I was learning with somebody yesterday, and I said right after, we're actually learning this piece, I said right after you get off the phone, put an alarm on your clock for 5 minutes. And don't do anything until the alarm goes off, but talk to God. Which is not an easy thing. People aren't used to it. After like 30 seconds, they're like, what is going on? They want to like check the something. Everyone's always checking. Do you know, by the way, that they have a thing on the phone called pickups? In your screen time, there's different things that you could check out.
Really?
Pickups is the amount of time you actually pick up the phone a day. They understand like the mechanics of an object moving through space. I mean, you tilt it, like just like your watch when you go like that. Like, how does it always know? Like, I just move it and it's on. So there's a technology in there that figures that stuff out. So they have pickups. It's literally the amount of time that you just pick up the phone to look at it. How many times do you think people were honest to me? They were bearing their heart that people pick up their phone.
Hundreds.
One person told me 270 times.
Yeah.
Hold on. Do you understand what that means? 270 times. And I said, how many of those were like actually like really relevant to me anymore? Like this. He said, nothing. They were all like LOL. And sometimes it's just like, just you're so used to it. You're so mevulbal. 270 times. Which means you could have had a consciousness, besides, forget the notifications. Even if you don't pick it up, it's just like bzz. There's also, it tells you how many notifications. At least 500 for many guys. Which means at least 500 times, if the phone buzzes in your pocket, if I'm still talking and it buzzes in your pocket, then I become the biggest distraction because you're distracting me from my real world. Like, will this rabbi stop talking already so I can finally like do another pickup? Because I got to check what's going on. That's the real world in there. And then it's just like emoji something. It means nothing. Which means that 500 times a person left the aloneness with God, especially if you're in a shir, you're in davening, you're in Hisbodedus. That for that many times, I'm checking out of the moment. Now, you can have your phones, it's no problem, but maybe you have times of the day that you're using them. Maybe be aware of, I want to be with God, and I have to be aware of things that check me out of that. So I told this person, I said, for 5 minutes. So that's number one. Block off a certain time of the day for a certain amount of time. What time of the day? So Rebbe Nachman speaks that it's a good idea to do it in a time that people aren't busy. Meaning it's a good idea to do it times of the day that are like quiet, that the world is quiet. Like in that picture you see, it looks quiet. That the world is not busy there. The world is very quiet there.
So before going to sleep would not necessarily be...
So before going to sleep is a very nice time because let's say, the world is, it depends on what time you go to bed. The world is quieting down. You're sitting close to bed. So you see this in this picture here, this is someone he's calling out to Hashem. He's by the Sada, he's by the field, by the lake, and he's calling out to Hashem. And it's quiet. He's being misboided. It's around Shkia time, like sunset or sunrise, which are very good times, especially sunrise. We anyways have it put into our consciousness that by sunrise, nates to daven, which means that you could do Hisbodedus before nates. That's a very nice time. At 4 in the morning, it's pretty quiet outside. I always think to myself, 4 in the morning is like the best time just to be alive and do stuff. But if everybody realized that, then it would be busy. So I'm thinking, but whenever you're up early, you feel it's like amazing. Like you want to tell the whole world. And for some reason still, the world stays quiet at that time. As many people who get it, that being up early is like where it's at, still it seems that the secret's still a secret. It's not out yet, because it's still quiet. The proof is it's still quiet. Nobody's doing anything yet, except those who know. But those who know are telling people, like, you should be up early. Like, what are you guys thinking? They're like, I know. Every time I do it, it's amazing. So why don't you? I don't know. So the world stays quiet. So even though I'm trying to tell a whole room of people to be up at 4 in the morning and do Hisbodedus, I think it'll still stay quiet. Even if everybody wakes up early and talks to Hashem when the world is quiet, I don't know, maybe it'll still stay quiet. Because it says that in the Torah, that's like a quiet time. So I wonder if everybody woke up at that time, would it still be quiet? This is all just coming down in my mind right now. Maybe it would be that even though everybody woke up early and now everybody's up, but they're all being quiet at that time. So the world will stay quiet. They'll be up, but it'll be quiet. It's a good time. That's a very good time when it's quiet, because the idea is it lisboided levadai, to be by yourself, to teach yourself how to be by yourself. It's hard to start doing that. You're sitting in Times Square. You're just like, I'm by myself. This guy bumping into you. Bro, you're not, get out of the way, bro. You can move away. What are you thinking? With your hands in the air and everything. What's going on? So you have to start, I think, levado, and then you could be misboided in Times Square. Yes?
Do you think it's important to, when you talk to God, is there certain levels? You can say, like, in your mind, like, pray to God in your head, or you could say God like this, or you could say God, or you can go God. You know, there's different levels. You know, like what do you think is like how should we be talking
like what,
about God?
Sound decibel?
Like, yeah. Should we be silent, loud?
The answer is all the above.
Okay.
All the above.
Yeah.
All the above. All the above. It's every decibel. There's no rules here.
Yeah.
The only rule is just talk to God. There's no rules. Should you be sitting? Should you be standing? Should you be standing on your head? In some yoga position. Whatever you want. It's great for the blood flow to be on your head. Everybody knows that. Come on. Push it. Blood, gravity pushes everything down to the feet. That's a lot of people have feet problems, and it's crystallization in the feet. It's a big problem. Because everything is just like settling and calcifying in the feet. So when you put your feet above your head, you start draining the feet. Start moving stuff around. Start, getting the whole body involved. And the Sfarim say that, back to Yitzchak for a second, this is a cute thing to think about, that it says that when Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basada, when Yitzchak went out to the field to pray, it says he was davening mincha. And remember, Rivka was coming to meet the one that she was getting set up with. Remember, a woman always gets to decide if she wants to have the marriage. But when she saw, Yitzchak it's a pretty chashuv chassan, I'll tell you that much. And it says that she's on the camel and it falls off the camel. So, you have to go back in the story that it says that Yitzchak, this was after the Akedah. After Akedah's Yitzchak, according to one opinion in the Zohar, he actually did go up to heaven. He actually was shechted. And then he came back to life. And the Gemara says that heaven is an interesting place. Heaven, one of the rabbis went up to heaven, they said, and he came back, he had a near-death experience. He said, what did you see when you were in heaven? He says, Olam hafach ra'isi. I saw an upside-down world. People that are low down here in this world, people that maybe are lowly, maybe that guy sitting in the corner learning a Tosfos, and you're like, what's with that guy? He didn't even get the latest tie fashion that came out this year. So up there, he's very big. And the people that are very big in this world, oh, wow, look at this politician, look at this, oh. In the next world, they're very low. Olam hafach reisi, it's like an upside down world. That's the Gemara says. Upside down world. So the Sfarim say that Yitzchak, when he was in Shemayim, it was a few years up there. So he was seeing the world upside down. So when he came back down to this world, it was just like fresh. So he comes back down to this world, but he came from an upside down world. So he was like walking on his hands. So Rivka didn't see him like normal. She saw him walking on his hands. So she's like trying to like see, because he was on his hands. So she fell off the camel.
That's what the Zohar says.
That's what the Sfarim say based on the Zohar. So basically what I'm telling you is you could stand on your hands, whatever you want in Hisbodedus. Whatever sound decibel you want, you can stand on your hands. Whatever, that's fine. Can't do veras, but stand on your hands. It's very organic. It's very organic. We're going to talk next time a little bit tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Rebbe Nachman has another piece that complements this piece of why also in the field there's something. He's going to talk about how the fields, this is such a good piece from Rebbe Nachman, you'll see, that the fields themselves are alive. That the grasses themselves like become part of your, I don't mean the grasses, you know what I'm saying? I mean the regular grass. Become part of your tefillah. And then when your nature, like all of nature helps sing your song with you, you become like symphonic with nature. Yeah.
You said people who are great in this world are not so great in the world to come. So can't you contest the Gemara and say, well, look, if somebody's great and they're like, they'd call it a billionaire, and then they're like, okay, I'm going to use this, I'm going to start like developing Sydney, the Jewish community there.
Sounds
or wherever
great.
it is, in Montreal.
And you're going to go speak there.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Mariah, right?
Mariah, yeah, that's what we want to do. And the thing is, if I like, let's say somebody was a billionaire, B'ezrat Hashem. So let's say we were.
Amen, if it's going to be good for us.
Let's say we use that money in good ways. Wouldn't God look at that? Okay, now in the world to come, I think we can put him in a good book. Like we can make him.
It doesn't mean everybody that has a certain greatness is going to be low,
Yeah.
but it means generally what we consider great down here, this Hollywood star, where the attention is put, some sports figure, where there's so much like, wow, that which we attribute as being amazing and great, in the real world, it's very, very low. And often what the world sees is like, you know, what's he doing, learning Torah? That's like, what's he really doing? You're sitting trying to understand a Tosfos. You're sitting trying to understand a piece of Gemara, to understand Rav Achai. What's the difference between Rav Achai and Rav Ashi's Pshat in Rav Yosef in the Gemara? And you're sitting on how did Rav Ashi understand the Brisa? And you're working through that piece of Gemara, and the world is like, trade some stocks, buddy. And he doesn't like get the value of what you're doing, and he considers it low. So up there, it's very big. Olam hafach ra'isi, I saw an upside down world. It's interesting also, I like from that piece of art is that you see the upside down world also in the mirror image. It's an upside down world. You see the whole story in the picture. There's so much here, my friends. This is really being an authentic Jew, and an authentic human being is that you talk to God. This is not just a Jewish thing, this is for the whole of humanity. It's to be somebody that speaks to God. To be able to have an open conversation, honest conversation about anything. To be levado, by yourself, hitbodedut. And to be in a process of becoming alone with God. And going through a journey of I'm alone with God, which is very intimate. I'm alone with God. That's like being in a cheder yichud with God. All day. Imagine that. Even when you interact with people, you're at the same time alone with God. Even when you're speaking to loved ones, you're speaking in a place of I'm also alone with God. Yeah, Daniel.
Is the reason, one of the reasons why it's good to talk in the field, because of like how in Elul there's the Melech Basada instantly connected, or?
This is the best time for Hisbodedus. This is the best time. The Melech is in the Sadeh. The Melech is in the Sadeh. That's why when the Melech is in the Sadeh, it's hard to get to the Melech when he's sitting on his throne. There's a lot of red tape you have to go through. But when the Melech is on a walk in the Sadeh, and you have a different type of access, you just like encounter, and the Melech is like, you're thinking like, I thought I had to like raise my position in the land, apply to come and see you, wait weeks, come to the capital city, go through a screening process, and all of a sudden you see the Melech, you're like, could I make a meeting with you like through your ministers? He's like, just talk to me right now. I'm right here. I'm right here. By the way, and I'll leave you with this. And many times when a person sees a tzaddik or a gadol, they almost become like, and they don't know what to say. You should always have questions. I suggest you take something like this, like a little note thing, like a moleskin thing, that you keep with you, and any like important things that you have in your mind, write it in this. And then when you see it tzaddik, like you ever been somewhere and like the Rosh Yeshiva was like waiting by the elevator and it was just like you, and you're like, hi Rosh Yeshiva, and he's like, hello, and you could ask him anything, like it's just you and him, and you're like blanking, you're like, I know I've got stuff that I would love to ask right now. So you want to have stuff ready to go that you could just ask the Rosh Yeshiva. So it's important that those types of things, write down, have them at your fingertips. Hisbodedus is a good time also, but it's also little pressure. Like, let stuff come up. You should be zoich, my dear friends, to be authentic, to have authentic conversation. There's going to be part 2 tomorrow. We only have a couple more shiurim for the whole Zman before Yom Kippur. So every day we're going to try to pack it in. B'siyata d'shmaya. There's a piece in Rav Nosson that takes us into Rosh Hashanah in a very, very deep way. We'll see if we're able to get to that as well. We should be zoich mamish, to be emes yidden, to be people that are alone with Hashem, and then to bring all of the world into recognition of ein oid milvadoi. There's only Hashem. Hashem is the only existence, and we're all inside of Hashem, and Hashem is willing us into existence and wants that relationship. You just have to pick up the phone and call. We should be zoich to this. Amen. Amen. Oy shum yeyu, shen shum yeyu, en shum yeyu, mama olam kla, Rabbeinu shua v'kol gadol, en shum yeyu, en shum yeyu, en shum yeyu, mama olam kla, hay mitzvah gedolah liyot b'simcha, b'simcha, b'simcha tamim. B'simcha liyot, b'simcha, b'simcha tamim. Yam diri lam diri lam diri la 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 ya la 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 yam diri lam diri lam diri la 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 ya la 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 la. Hey mitzvah gedolah liyot b'simcha liyot, b'simcha b'simcha tamim. Mitzvah gedolah liyot b'simcha liyot, b'simcha b'simcha tamim. Shachris.